All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and you already know we had to come with the Day 5 breakdown of everything that went down in the 2024 Washington Commanders training camp. And of course, I'm going to show y'all the clips of everything that happened in practice as well. You already know how this goes. And today was the first day of pads. So now we can actually start to evaluate offensive line, defensive line, and a lot of things like that, especially the trenches, with a little bit more honesty and detail. Also, you have a new, speaking of offensive line, it looks like we have a new starting left tackle. We're not going to say that it's a permanent thing just yet, but this guy has now started a left tackle for you, at least gotten starting snaps at left tackle for you. Now he's stringing together multiple days of it. We're going to dive into the entire offensive line, of course. Also, Jaden Daniels threw a few touchdowns today. We even have a clip of one of them to Austin Eckler. We'll show that. You have the linebackers eating, and we're not even just talking about Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, who are pretty obvious. We're also talking about the guys behind them on the depth chart. That does not include Jamin Davis, who is technically an edge rusher. We have other guys emerging in the linebacker group as well. We're going to dive into all that and more, because you know we're going to do a full breakdown of what Dan Quinn said before practice, some of the notable people that were at practice that aren't typically there, and then of course we're going to go position group by position group with the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, talk about everybody that stood out in a positive or negative way, all the way down through every position group in the defense and even special teams. And make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end of the video, because we also have some fun and funny clips at the end, including some rookies where they're having to, you know, pull their rookie duties and carry some veteran pads and helmets back to the locker room. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I promise y'all I have y'all covered for every single day that we have practice, and we have access to that practice where we know what happens. We get to see what happens with the clips that I'm providing y'all in these videos. Shouts out to everybody going to the practices, providing these clips. Shouts out to all of y'all big time, because it's just so fun being so involved and feeling like you're right there with a lot of the practices that's going on, of course. And hopefully, it seems like so far we've had access to every training camp practice, and hopefully this continues. But I feel like up to a certain point they're eventually going to shut these training camps down to where we get no clips, no information, because now they're starting to strategize towards their opponents, especially looking forward towards that Tampa Bay Buccaneers week 1 matchup in Tampa Bay. But we have joint practices coming up with the Jets and the Dolphins eventually. I will have y'all all of that fully broken down and everything like that, analysis with all of those, just like a typical day of practice. And I will be live streaming those preseason games just like I do with the regular season games as well. So make sure you stay tuned, because even days that we don't have practice or don't have access to practice, I have so much content, so many different ideas that I have stuff to get to y'all. So we're doing a video every day, and we're getting to the point we need to do like 2 a day. But instead of wasting more of y'all time, because we're already 3 minutes in, let's go ahead and dive into everything here, what happened in practice today. Let's get it. Adam. Yes, sir. So again, day 5 of practice, first day with pads. We're starting to ramp things up. It was somewhat of like a shorter practice overall, like less time spent, but again, there were pads out there with the players, so we got to be able to evaluate offensive line and defensive line a little bit better than we have so far throughout the entire offseason. So I'm really excited about that. And then today, along with Lance Newmark, our assistant general manager, you had Scott Fitterer, the former Panthers general manager, who was recently hired just like a couple of weeks ago to now be our personnel executive. So he was out there as well at practice. And then, of course, we have the tracker going of who's the first guy onto the field when practice is about to start. And Mitch Tisler, shouts out to him, because he's always the one giving y'all these updates. And day 5, first day in pads, the first commander to the field is, of course, none other than Bryson Tremaine. Out of the 5 days of training camp so far, he's been the first on the field 4 out of those 5 days. And Mitch Tisler even said that he's getting to the point that, I mean, he's about to start waving the white flag and maybe not even keep track of this, because it seems like something we can pretty much expect from here on out. But again, we had another packed house today at camp. Day 2 of fans being able to be there. It was the first day of pads. It was the second day the fans could attend. And like you can see in this clip provided by Brian Colbert Jr. on Twitter at BC_TV, it was a full house, more than packed. Now let's give you some injury updates. All of them seem to be positive. So first of all, Dan Quinn said that Andrew Wiley will be back onto the field today, went through some work Sunday, but no full team sessions just yet, and said that he had tightness in an unspecified area. So they're really trying to stay very cryptic and like they don't want us to really know exactly what's going on with Andrew Wiley. I'm pretty sure that's deliberate. Who knows? But either way, we're starting to get a little bit more information on the Andrew Wiley injury. But whatever it wasn't enough to hold him back to be able to participate in practice today, as in Monday. Sunday, again, he wasn't able to do full team sessions. Today he was. So that's a positive update on the injury report there. Also, another positive injury report update. Dan Quinn said that they'll start using Johnny Newton in some team drills really soon. Not today, but really soon. And he also said that there's no limitations for him physically right now, but they're just trying to ramp him up slowly after recovering from a second foot surgery this offseason alone. He had 2 foot surgeries, one to each foot in this offseason, and they don't want to rush him back and potentially cause him any more long-term damage. But it's really cool that basically he's 100% physically, but they're just trying to ramp him up slowly. They don't want to throw him out there the first day of padded practice, but expect to start seeing Johnny Newton involved in these team drills and start to hear more and more updates coming from his end. I'm very excited. Now let's talk about the coaches. And of course, when we're talking about coaches, we're mostly talking about Dan Quinn, but we also have a very interesting and optimistic Cliff Kingsbury update, our offensive coordinator. Shouts out to David Harrison for providing this tweet. He said the Washington Commanders' first day in pads at training camp is also a salute day. So this is also the military themed day. Shouts out to the military. And Coach Dan Quinn said that it's one of his favorite days because, quote, nobody does the team better than our military, unquote. So just wanted to remind y'all, second day the fans are attending, first day of practice, and also a military day. And then Quinn also talked about the pads and the aggression. He said, quote, it's a lot like sparring, in control, never out of control, unquote. And he wants to see that continue. So he basically wants it at a level to where they're being physical, but he doesn't want them trying to hurt each other. And I feel like that's a perfect balance. And from everything that I've heard and seen so far about what went down in practice today, it seems like everything went as smoothly as Dan Quinn wanted it to go. No further injuries, nobody being way too rough, but also the team wasn't just being lackadaisical, they were being very physical. So it seems like they met that happy middle that Dan Quinn expected of them. Now, Cliff Kingsbury wise, before we move on to the quarterbacks, we have an update that said that Zach Ertz after practice had a presser, and he talked about the difference in Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona compared to what he is now for the Washington Commanders. And he said, quote, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Cliff so happy. He seems like he's refreshed every time he goes out on the practice field. He is eager. I truly believe that maybe that break from everything last year and him able to get his job and work with Jaden Daniels, Mariota, Hartman, and Driscoll every day has really almost, I would say, rejuvenated him. I think I'm in the same boat, you know. It has been extremely fun to be here, unquote. And so that's a big compliment to not only the players on the team, but really just the organization as a whole. Cliff Kingsbury just seems like a new guy compared to when Zach Ertz was a tight end for him when Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach of the Cardinals. Zach Ertz himself, who would know, again, has been with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona and in Washington, both places, said that this seems like a completely different guy, seems like a way happier guy, a way more optimistic guy, and that should bear very well for us, especially results wise. Like, a guy coming into work that happy every day compared to him, he probably felt like he was just obligated to continue being a head coach. He was probably mentally done with being a head coach for the Cardinals for a while, but he just kind of had to see it through. It seems like this is like a new chance and a new opportunity of life for him, and he's very excited about it. And not just because it's a new opportunity, but Zach Ertz also emphasized just the quarterback that the group that he's working with right now has him very excited. Now, specifically about the entire offense before we actually get to the quarterbacks, again, every day through ESPN, every team, a representative from each of the 32 NFL teams gives kind of like an update on one specific part of their training camp practice. One of the most notable things that came out of the practice. John Com is, of course, our representative at ESPN. He said when the pads came on Monday, so too did more of an emphasis on the run game. But even before this point, the Commanders focused more on the run game in practice than they did at any point last season under former offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. And then you saw that we ran the ball the least out of the NFL last year. So I guess by default, you can't really emphasize it any less than Eric Bieniemy. But it's good to hear that we were already emphasizing the run game before we even got the pads on, when you could actually fully analyze what's going on and really exactly understand how good or poorly your run game looks right at this point. But now that we have the pads on, we're fully diving into the run game, ramping it up even more than we previously were. And then continuing with John Com's written description about what happened in practice today, that focus is expected to continue into the season. In 2023, Washington ranked last with 359 runs and first in pass dropbacks. So we passed the ball more than anybody else, and we ran the ball less than anybody else last year. That strategy wasn't dictated by score. The Commanders had the same rankings in first half of games. You saw what that got us. It said right guard Samuel Cosmi, who was outspoken last season about the need to run more. The Commanders feel good about their interior line, in particular to lead a recharged run game. Cosmi's run blocking will provide a big help. Quote, I feel like I'm one of the best in the league, Cosmi said. I'll be dirty, I'll be nasty, and I won't take S word from anybody, unquote. So this run game, they're really excited about it. Cliff Kingsbury seems like he's clearly going to utilize it. Anthony Lynn wasn't brought here. He didn't leave his opportunity in San Francisco, probably the best run game coordinator opportunity that could ever possibly happen, that you could ever get. He was the running game coordinator and running backs coach for the best running back in football in Christian McCaffrey, but also the #1 run game in the NFL with the 49ers. For him to leave that situation to come here and not even necessarily get a promotion, do the same thing, lateral move, you knew that he was coming here to enforce this run game and to let his voice be heard. So even as pass happy as Cliff Kingsbury can get at times, even though he ran the ball more than what people like the narrative show, it seems, when it comes to how he ran the offense in Arizona, but Anthony Lynn is coming here to make sure we do marry the pass with the run really well. We're not going to be anywhere near what we were like under Eric Bieniemy, and I'm really excited about that. Now moving on to the quarterbacks. Of course, you have Jaden Daniels walking out with the basketball per usual. Again, he warms up with the basketball every day before practice, like you can see in this clip right here. And I also love Jaden Daniels' personality, man. He's always just chilling, dancing, smiling. As you can see him vibing out before the practice even started. Shouts out to Linnell Willingham for this clip right here. And even before this clip actually happened, he was even trolling Sam Hartman before practice started in this clip right here.
It's Sam Hartman's 30th birthday.
Good stuff, guys.
30-year-old rookie, man. It's crazy. Happy birthday, Sam.
Apparently, it was Sam Hartman's birthday. I believe he actually turned 25, but Jaden Daniels was making fun of him and saying that he turned 30 in that clip. And then you also have him dancing a little bit more from a clip provided by Scott Abraham. So it seemed like he was dancing a lot today. Shorter practice, more dancing from Jaden Daniels. Now let's get into what actually happened in practice once we especially started to do team-on-team drills. Linnell Willingham said that Jaden Daniels got the first work at quarterback with the first team, so he was basically the starter today. Seems like he started more days than Marcus Mariota has. We'll see what that means, if he'll just start to eventually just become the full-blown starter. Eventually they'll announce it probably sooner rather than later. Then JP Finley pointed out that Jaden Daniels was getting the first team reps on 11-on-11s, especially in the goal line work, and he also said full pads, that tells the story. Jaden Daniels is your starter in these scenarios, so it sounds like he should be the starter moving forward. Linnell also pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels got his first completion of 11-on-11s to Casimir Allen on a 10-yard hook over the middle, and the ball apparently had really good zip on it. Then Linnell also pointed out the fact that Terry had a drop on an off-schedule throw from Jaden Daniels along the sideline, and he emphasized that it was a great throw by Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin just dropped it for whatever reason. My boy Josh Taylor, make sure you follow him as well. He was at the practice, and he said that Jaden Daniels had a really good rollout to the left and then threw a dart at the left end zone sideline, and Terry just missed it. So just basically imagine Jaden Daniels rolling out, running to his left, and then he's just delivering a ball on the run, perfectly placed, and for some crazy reason Terry McLaurin dropped it. We need better than that, Terry McLaurin. We have some positive clips and information about Terry McLaurin later in this video, but you can't drop those, man. You just really cannot drop those. But then other people were not dropping their touchdown passes. So at a certain point, Jaden Daniels got a touchdown on a catch and run to Olamide Zaccheaus. So even though Olamide wasn't in the end zone by the time he received the ball, Jaden Daniels, the offense, whatever, set it up to where Olamide had enough space to catch the ball and still get to the end zone for a touchdown. And then it was a situation where it was back-to-back touchdowns, because it went from Olamide Zaccheaus in one play to, I believe, the very next play, he had a really good drop-off pass to Austin Eckler underneath, and then he was able to get a touchdown as well. And if you wanted to see that clip, here it is right here. And so to me, it sounds like And looks like from that clip that Jaden Daniels had a great day and bounced back from day one of pads being on, where all of the quarterbacks seemed to struggle a little bit because this was the first day of pads, but the first day of fans being there seemed like all of the quarterbacks struggled. I don't know if the fans being there affected them, but the second day of fans being there and the first day of pads, Jaden Daniels bounced back big time from what I'm hearing. Josh Taylor even said that it was a much shorter practice today, but Jaden Daniels looked better than yesterday. And not a large sample size though. He wanted to emphasize that. And then my boy Dre at DC Sports Dre said, it's noteworthy to me that Jaden Daniels hasn't had a bad practice yet. You expect some down days for rookie quarterbacks, but his down days seem just like an okay day for him. That's at worst what he's shown us. Compared to the other rookies in the draft, you see normal reports of them having struggle days. It's early, but still nice, and I'm completely with them right there. And then outside of Jaden Daniels specifically, Dan Quinn said that they haven't made a final determination on the number of quarterbacks they'll keep on the final 53-man roster. He said, quote, but what I can say is I'm pleased with the group of 4 that we do have here, unquote. Again, Jaden Daniels, of course, going to be a starter, obviously. Already seems like he's the starter, even just by the reps that he's getting in practice. Then it's Marcus Mariota. Then it's Jeff Driscoll, I'm assuming. Then Sam Hartman 4th. But we'll see if Sam Hartman can climb that and maybe even end up being the 3rd. And who knows? I mean, best case scenario for him, maybe there's a chance he improves and develops enough to where he even becomes the 2nd string quarterback, but I doubt it. I think at best he could become the 3rd and maybe make this roster over Jeff Driscoll if we only keep 3, but we'll see how that goes. Now moving on to the running back position. In this clip right here, you see Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson working really hard to make each other better. I love how their relationship is, the way that they're bonding. It's amazing because they're literally, like I've already talked about, they're basically like neck and neck, a two-headed monster. It's not a one guy is slightly over the guy in the depth chart. They're both going to be used equally, and you can just tell from their relationship, as you can see in this clip right now, they're going to be tough to stop because they're motivating each other. I'm pretty sure they have some sort of like a competitive friendship going on, relationship, to where they're going to try to outdo each other as well, which is going to cause each other to be better. And then at a certain point in practice, Brian Robinson had a touchdown where he was running behind Michael Dieter, who was working as the first team's left guard. So great block by Michael Dieter, good run by Brian Robinson for a good touchdown. And then even though Jeremy McNichols has stood out as like basically the 3rd best back in the group, basically the best back only behind our two-headed monster Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, apparently today Zach Selby said that Chris Rodriguez told him the other day that he was looking forward to the first days in pads, and after catching a pass from Mariota, he laid a lick on 2 defenders before getting out of bounds. And I'm not gonna lie, this makes a lot of sense. Like, no pads being on this win, a receiving back like Jeremy McNichols probably has the advantage to stand out over the more physical, in between the tackle style of running back that is Chris Rodriguez. But now that the pads are on and we have some contact going on, Rodriguez gets to show why he's valuable to the team in his own way. So we'll see if Chris Rodriguez's physicality can outweigh Jeremy Nichols' receiving impact, because I'm not very confident that we will keep 4 running backs. Maybe they do, but if we only keep 3, basically both of these guys are competing head to head to see who will get that 3rd spot. We'll see what happens with the final 53-man roster. Again, Dan Quinn said they're not really thinking about the final 53-man roster just yet, but I'm pretty sure what they're doing right now in practice as of now counts. Dan Quinn even said that they're monitoring the whole process. It's not like just all we have is a final exam after the 3rd preseason game and that's it. No, they're watching the entire process. You're being graded on everything that you've done throughout the entire training camp, all of the preseason games and things like that. So we'll see how this goes. And lastly, before we leave the running back section of this, Chris Rodriguez even said it himself, I feel like I'm in a good position to be that guy. So maybe he's even talking about being utilized even more than Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. He has high hopes. He has pretty high goals there. He's trying to be the feature back, and I love the fact that he has that level of motivation. Now moving on to the wide receivers. We have some names outside of the most notable ones, of course, like Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, and Luke McCaffrey. We have names outside of that are sticking out, like Olamide Zaccheaus had a touchdown from a slant that was thrown to him by Marcus Mariota at some point in practice today. And even Jamison Crowder ended up converting a 2-point conversion for the team from a wide open throw from even Jeff Driscoll. Now, it is interesting, though, that Jamison Crowder is out there with Jeff Driscoll. That doesn't sound very good for Jamison Crowder depth chart wise, but he's probably leading in the punt punt return. So maybe he's destined to make the roster regardless. We'll see what's going on there. But my point is that the wide receiver depth may be a little bit better than I thought before we entered these off-season practices. I'm liking what I'm hearing so far about like several different guys flashing at times. Because don't forget that Davion Davis has been standing out enough to where he's even getting starting reps. And I've heard several reports from different people going to the practices that it seems like Jaden Daniels and Davion Davis have some chemistry going. And then I've also been hearing great things about Casimir Allen the past few days. Then you had Mitchell Tinsley, who had a really good past couple of days as well recently. So there's a lot of guys standing out in this receiver room. And also, even on top of that, of course, you have guys like Terry McLaurin, man. Here's a clip provided by Mitchell Tinsley here, where Terry McLaurin, he's talking about how he's never not working during special teams period, where most other people are just kind of chilling because there's nothing really for the offense or the defense to do. Terry's working off to the side, getting in extra passes and always leading by example. And if the best receiver on the team is doing that, how do you as the guy behind him on the depth chart not follow by example? Because you need to do, if anything, you need to do more than Terry McLaurin to keep up with them. And then just in case, if you wanted a couple of clips of your top two receivers catching passes, because we really don't talk about Terry McLaurin and especially Jahan Dotson enough, here you go. The first one being Jahan Dotson provided by Scott Abraham, and then the second one also provided by Scott Abraham as a throw of Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin. And then moving on to the tight ends, we had that catch from Ben Sinnott from yesterday. This didn't happen today, but I just wanted to show you the clip of what happened yesterday where he had that one-handed catch that was thrown behind him by Jaden Daniels. Not a good throw from Jaden Daniels, but a great catch from Ben Sinnott. And I just wanted to make sure y'all saw it because it was uploaded like way later after practice by the Commanders. And I just, even though this is what happened yesterday, still felt like I needed to include it today just to make sure y'all saw it. But again, Linnell Willingham has pointed out that Ben Sinnott has struggled with drops throughout training camp. So far through the first 5 practices, it seems like he's had at least one drop almost every practice, if not literally every practice. And shouts out to Kendra Jones, the linebacker, in coverage there. Sounds like he has some pretty good coverage in that play. We're going to talk about him later as one of those linebackers that's starting to stand out. We'll get there when we get to the linebacker part of this video. Now moving on to the offensive line. In here, as you can see in this clip right now, you can see them working on some combo blocks, and the footage is provided by Linnell Willingham, of course. And now let's dive into what the offensive line had going on today. Well, shouts out to Linnell Willingham for pointing this out, because once situational work got started, Brandon Coleman was the first team left tackle, and Andrew Wiley, again, who returned to practice today, was the starting right tackle. So remember where I was talking about, well, Brandon Coleman has been getting a lot of looks at left tackle because Andrew Wiley has been hurt at right tackle, but you would think that if it was more of like a replacing Andrew Wiley thing, Brandon Coleman will be at right tackle rather than left tackle, but it's been Cornelius Lucas at right tackle. But now, with Andrew Wiley back, we finally have our official answer. Cornelius Lucas is looking like he's starting to be the backup to Brandon Coleman. Brandon Coleman is just starting left tackle, and Andrew Wiley, when healthy, is just starting right tackle. This is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And then, Dan Quinn even talked about the offensive line before practice. He said it's worth to experiment with guys at different positions now rather than later when guys are locked in at certain positions. Some of our guards can play center, all of our centers can play guard, and some of our tackles can play multiple positions. And I love the fact, I really want to emphasize, as in me being Rico of Street Scores, that I love the fact that we're experimenting, but Dan Quinn acknowledged the fact that this is something that we're doing early and now, not later as we get closer to the regular season, because at a certain point, we need to lock these guys into the certain positions that they will play, and we need to train them there. We can cross-train them early, but once we start to get closer to those preseason games and the regular season, we need guys to know exactly what they're doing so that they can train specifically for that. The way that they eat, the way that they exercise, the way that they practice, the way that they weight lift should all be tailored around the exact position that they plan on playing. Whether you're a guard or a tackle, those are different, completely different techniques as far as playing, but even preparation wise, even development, even practicing, exercise, even potentially your diet is different based on which position you're prioritizing. So yeah, we can experiment now, but once we get further into training camp, we need to start figuring out who's doing exactly what. Shouts out to Mark Tyler for pointing this out as well. Now that the pads are on, there's a shift to the line of scrimmage. We're starting to see more crazy combinations. At offensive tackle, we want to see who is really the left tackle, who is really the right tackle, and he can be basically your direct backup, your swing tackle that can play either one. As of right now, it's starting to look like Brandon Coleman left, Andrew Wiley right, and then Cornelius Lucas, your backup swing tackle, which is the best case scenario for us. And the fact that we're already talking about this July 29th, only day 5 of training camp, that is huge. I hope they're not just playing Brandon Coleman there just as part of like an experiment. Maybe that's some of it, but if Brandon Coleman has truly stepped up and he looks like the starting left tackle already, better than Cornelius Lucas, better than Trent Scott, then we're way ahead of schedule, and this offense could actually come out week 1 guns blazing, because that's my biggest worry with the entire team right now. Do we have competence at the left tackle position? And we'll see. I've already told y'all, Cornelius Lucas, decent pass protector, even though that Dallas Cowboys game last year to end the season would say otherwise. Decent pass protector, not a good run blocker at all. Trent Scott, great run blocker, can get to the next level, very mobile, can pull and things like that. Not good at pass protecting at all. I mean, if you're passing the ball, I guess maybe Cornelius Lucas. If you're running the ball, I guess Trent Scott. How about we get a left tackle that can actually do both, that you can pass the ball with and Jaden Daniels doesn't have to worry about his blind side, and you can also run the ball with, to where when he's on the field, it doesn't tell the defense that you're automatically passing the ball. He can run block effectively. He can get to the next level, even take out a linebacker or a DB and things like that. Brandon Coleman has the potential and the talent to do that. It's all about whether he's ready sooner rather than later to do that. It would be nice if he'd be ready by week 1 of the regular season. That was the hopes of after we drafted him. That's the ultimate goal. Can he be ready to start at left tackle for us week 1 heading into Tampa Bay? It sounds like he's already ahead of schedule there, but we'll see. Maybe this could just be experimenting. I'm hearing good things though. We're going to get to that soon. Like I mentioned earlier, Michael Dieter, who is projected to really honestly be our backup center behind Tyler Biadasz, he was with the starters at left guard today. Again, in the spirit of experimenting, as said by Dan Quinn, this is a lot of cross training going on. So I don't know how much to really how much to take away from the fact that Michael Dieter was our starting left guard today, but apparently he did a great job of paving the way for Brian Robinson to run for a touchdown. And I'm also hearing that Brandon Coleman did a great job of on the play as well, and basically sealing off the edge rusher, which allowed Brian Robinson to get that touchdown. So I'm assuming Brian Robinson probably ran somewhere in like the B gap between the guard and the tackle and was able to get that touchdown, because Brandon Coleman did his job, Michael Dieter did his job, and they basically parted the Red Sea for him. And that's what I like to hear, man. That's what I love to hear. And then Mitch Tisler also pointed out the fact that the other offensive line doings to pay attention to is especially left guard, where Michael Dieter has been taking the first reps over Nick Allegretti for a few practices now. So this is not just today. This is a few practices situation. We'll see how this goes continuing moving forward. I like Nick Allegretti at left guard potentially, even though he hasn't necessarily started there for an extended period of time. We'll see how this goes, but hey man, I like him there. And if Michael Dieter's even better there, and instead of using him as a backup center, he's just starting left guard because he's just that good, hey, even better. We'll see. So maybe this is a thing, but I do want to point out the fact that Linnell Willingham said that Allegretti did do a great job of getting out in space on a screen to Jeremy McNichols. So he's also going out there competing and looking pretty good as well. So it sounds like we probably have a little bit more offensive line depth than we thought, a little bit more offensive line competition for the starters as we thought as well. It's not as obvious who's going to start for us week 1 as we originally thought potentially. And Dan Quinn even spoke highly of Brandon Coleman before practice started, before he even had made those good plays that we just talked about. He said, quote, "I knew he was a very good athlete, and according to his relative athletic score, he's an elite athlete." But continuing on with Dan Quinn's quote, "But one of the things I've been impressed with so far is he has great balance for a big guy. He is very rarely someone who is out of position. He's a very in-control player as an offensive lineman, and that's a real attribute as an offensive lineman," unquote. And I agree wholeheartedly. That is great news. I want to applaud hearing that news, man. It doesn't automatically mean that he's going to be ready to start for us week 1, but it does sound like he's definitely further ahead in his development than expected. And then my dog Pedro Smith said after practice that the rookies stood out, the ones that stood out the most to him today out of the rookie class were Jordan McGee and Brandon Coleman. Great news, because like I've said, man, I'm confident that Ben Sinnot's going to be great. I know he's going to do great things. I know Jaden Daniels, I'm very confident in his ability to be great. I know Mike Sanverstill's going to ball out. Johnny Newton's going to ball out. Jordan McGee, I'm way higher on him than most people, and I've been hearing great things about him so far in training camp as well. My biggest concern going into this regular season is who's starting at left tackle, and of course we spent the 3rd round pick on a potential starting left tackle in Brandon Coleman. And I mean, maybe we could talk about outside corner competition. We can maybe talk about wide receiver depth. Maybe we don't have a super alpha male in the edge rusher group. But obviously, right now, our biggest question mark, his biggest concern going into the regular season is who will be our starting left tackle, and will they be good enough to hold that spot down so that Jaden Daniels doesn't have to worry about his blind spot. If Brandon Coleman is ahead of schedule and he looks like he can be ready to start week 1, I don't think y'all understand how huge that is for our team. Like I said in another video, maybe it was the previous video or maybe the video before that, but I said that, like, if I could pick anybody from this rookie class to just shoot up to a 99 overall in real life, it would easily be Brandon Coleman. If I could get Brandon Coleman to turn into Trip Williams, if I could get Jaden Daniels to turn into Michael Vick, if I can get Mike Sanverstill to turn into an elite corner or whatever, my pick would be Brandon Coleman being Trip Williams easily, because that allows Jaden Daniels to do his job. Even if Jaden Daniels is Michael Vick, if he doesn't have a good left tackle to start for him, his blind side getting abused all day, that's going to limit his effectiveness. So Brandon Coleman is just really like the foundation. We got to get that right before we start to get fancy with the rest of the house. So I'm really excited hearing about that. Then Linnell Willingham even pointed out the fact that Brandon Coleman had a monster block versus Cleveland Farrell, putting them down after Cleveland Farrell tried to run the hoop. So loving what I'm hearing from Brandon Coleman here. And going back to the amazing balance compliment that Dan Quinn gave Brandon Coleman, my boy Mark Tyler brings up a great point from Hogs Haven. He said Dan Quinn spoke this morning before camp about how impressed with Brandon Coleman's balance he was. One major issue with Andrew Wiley at right tackle is his lack of contact balance. So this is something worth watching as the pads come on. If Brandon Coleman's standing out, that's big time for us. George Carmi also brings up a great point. Brandon Coleman is getting some serious exposure at both tackle spots. We'll see how he looks with the pads on, but if he develops into a starter, this draft class could be very good. Again, going back to my point, I'm very confident in a lot of the draft picks that we made, that how great they're going to be, at the very least a certain floor of how good they'll be. If Brandon Coleman turns out to be a really good left tackle, even Pro Bowl level, this is a legendary draft class here. Legendary. Adam Peters pulled a rabbit out the hat, basically. But even with all of that hype, there was still one play that showed that both Brandon Coleman and Michael Dieter are still human, even with all of the hype that's going on right now, just to bring them back down to earth. Because again, I'm always going to be 100% transparent with y'all. I'm going to give you the good and the bad. So even as much as I just hyped up Brandon Coleman, there was a moment where Brandon Coleman and Michael Dieter did not have a good play. And I feel like, if anything, this is more so an example of elite coaching from Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. coming into place, where they're going to do a lot of stunts. They're going to be really creative on defense. And even if we're not the most talented defensive line, especially edge rusher group specifically, we're always going to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback and make plays in the backfield, because they'll make pressure schematically, even if our guys can't necessarily do it in one-on-one matchups as consistently as we like. So at a certain point, Linnell pointed out the fact that Coleman and Dieter had a play blown up because it was a good stunt from the defense and they did a bad job of passing it off. Again, bad play by Coleman and Dieter. We got to work on those things there. But also just a great play from the defense. And I like the fact that I'm already hearing that our stunt defense is already working. Because remember, we were like mid-season at points, and we were still talking about Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Chase Young gaining chemistry with their stunts. The fact that we're already having effective stunts going on right now is big time. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, of course, starting with the defensive line. Got to start with the defensive line. As you can see in these clips right now, man, we got some dogs, man. And just as an update, just to remind you, the starting defensive line is still Dorrance Armstrong, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Cleveland Farrell for right now. But with the information I'm about to give you, that may not necessarily last that long. We may get to a point where we have a new defensive line structure. And as great as Johnny Newton is, you want him on the field as often as possible. And there just may be times where he just is the other starting edge rusher opposite of Dorrance Armstrong. Because he's kind of small for defensive tackle and he's kind of big for edge rusher. So he's kind of a tweener. But as talented as he is and as great as I know he's going to be, literally as soon as we get him on the field, I think week 1 against Tampa Bay, he's going to have an impact, a strong impact. Even as a rookie, that missed all of rookie mini camps, voluntary OTAs, and mandatory mini camps, and even summer training camp. I'm just that high on him. I want him on the field as often as possible is my main point. So if he has to start opposite of Dorrance Armstrong over Cleveland Farrell, over KJ Henry, over Dante Fowler, do just that. But even outside of Johnny Newton, some of the information I'm going to give you right now soon, maybe Cleveland Farrell isn't safe even with Johnny Newton still a little banged up, even though they're saying he's 100%. They're just trying to ramp him up like we talked about earlier. But either way, at a certain point in practice, Daron Payne got some really quick pressure on Daniels, and it would have been a sack. I heard that from multiple people that went to the practice today, that Daron Payne was like a monster. Like, he was very impactful. So again, I mean, per usual, when the defense is making plays, it makes you question the offense. When the offense is making plays, it makes you question the defense. So Daron Payne's whipping up on our offensive line that much. Do we need to be more concerned about the offensive line is my point. We'll see. That's what the joint practices are for. That's what the preseason is for, and that's why we really can't wait. But Josh Taylor pointed out the fact that Dante Fowler blew up a run play to the left in the backfield. In the backfield, not 5 yards down the field, in the backfield. Would have been a huge play in the game if it were like a real game, he emphasized. And Dante Fowler is more of a pass rush specialist, just to remind you, that will more than likely play on like obvious passing downs like 3rd and long and things like that. But if he can make plays against the run and learn how to set the edge consistently, which up to this point in his fairly long career he hasn't shown he can do, but hey man, he's going to see the field a lot if he can do that. So Cleveland Farrell may not be starting for long. We'll see. Ideally, of course, KJ Henry develops to the point that he can take the starting edge spot opposite of Dorrance Armstrong. But right now, Dante Fowler's on Cleveland Farrell's heels right now. Apparently, just in the base defense with the starter, since Cleveland Farrell's been the starting edge rusher so far over Dante Fowler, sounds like they're prioritizing run stopping over pass rush ability. But if Dante Fowler, again, who's known as a pass rusher, can start to gain a little bit more run stopping ability, even if he never reaches the level of Cleveland Farrell run stopping ability wise, if he's a way better pass rusher but only a slightly worse run stopper, Dante Fowler could eventually dethrone Cleveland Farrell as the starting edge rusher opposite of Dorrance Armstrong. I hope y'all understand what I'm trying to say there. And also, Linnell Willingham pointed out the fact that Andre Jones even got his hands up at the line of scrimmage, forcing an incompletion. So he's even starting to stand out and make plays. Our 7th round pick from last year, who had a great offseason. Then we got to the regular season, he just disappeared. I still don't know what happened there. Now moving on to the linebacker group, and shouts out to Mason Kinahan, because this is a clip that came from the Washington Commanders. But with this clip that you're about to see, he said that Frankie Louvu is in for a big year this year. And I definitely agree. I mean, again, you already had, I think it was Mike Clay that said Frankie Louvu is going to be the 2nd best linebacker in the entire NFL, I believe. Or was it Doug Farrar? One of the two had Frankie Louvu as the 2nd best linebacker in the NFL. And then the other one had the Commanders having literally the best linebacker group in the NFL, even over the Fred Warner-led 49ers. Here's the clip right here. And this is him in coverage, because we know he's an elite run stopper. He's arguably the best pass rushing, especially right up the middle, off-ball linebacker in NFL, you can argue. If he's making plays like this in coverage, he will be literally the 2nd best linebacker in NFL. I mean, you could even have a debate about a decent argument that maybe he is the best linebacker in NFL, even better than Bobby Wagner. Speaking of Bobby Wagner, he and Frankie Louvu are always the guys leading the practices, just like in this clip you see right here. And then shouts out to my boy Pedro Smith. Again, make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. You follow him on Twitter and everything. Shouts out to everybody that I'm shouting out in these videos. Make sure you follow these guys everywhere that you can. He went to practice today, and he pointed out the fact that he thought that Jordan McGee looked pretty good today and had some nice tackles in the run game. So I believe this was his first practice that he went to practice. We've been hearing a lot of Jordan McGee hype throughout, and his first practice going to see the Commanders in person. I believe one thing that really stood out to him was Jordan McGee. Again, we talked about earlier, Pedro Smith said that the main thing he took away from today, the rookies that really stood out to him, were Brandon Coleman and Jordan McGee. That's big time. That's a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. If you're getting greatness out of those guys, and again, I'll keep saying over and over again, I know what those 1st and 2nd round picks are going to do. If those 3rd and 5th round picks are ready, oh, it's about to cooking with fish grease, man. And then also a really unknown name in that linebacker group. Shouts out to Linnell for this info. Local cat Keandre Jones blowing up a play on the blitz, and then the very next play made a stop on the edge. This linebacker group may be way deeper than y'all think. Jordan McGee, the 5th round rookie, and Keandre Jones, a local player that's kind of in the mix. If he's making plays, we're 4 deep at linebacker, it can get dangerous. And again, when we're saying we're 4 deep at linebacker, that does not include Jamin Davis, because again, he's a defensive lineman, technically an edge rusher. Now moving on to cornerback. And Dan Quinn talked about the battle at cornerback for the starting spots. He said that Forbes, St. Juste, and Davis will all battle at outside corner, and others may get looks too. Remember, Tariq Castro-Fields got some looks in yesterday's practice with the starting team at outside corner alongside Emmanuel Forbes. It was Tariq Castro-Fields and Emmanuel Forbes as your 2 starting outside corners at some point in practice with the starters yesterday. And now I wonder, when Dan Quinn was asked this question and he talked about those 3 being the guys that are really going to get a chance to compete, I wonder why he didn't include Tariq Castro-Fields' name in that discussion after yesterday's practice before today's practice. Maybe Tariq didn't handle it very well. Maybe he didn't go out there with the starters and look as good as we expected. He's been getting raving reviews with the backups. Maybe when he went out there with the starters, maybe it was a little bit too much for him to handle. Who knows? Because that's going from covering guys like Mitchell Tinsley and Casimir Allen and those guys to covering Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. So maybe he just maybe he's shown flashes. Maybe he's just not ready yet. But either way, maybe Dan Quinn not including them in that discussion. And he said that other guys will get looks, but he didn't even include Tariq Castro-Fields' name in that group of 3. So maybe they just chalked it up as, with Tariq Castro-Fields, well, we tried. We gave him opportunities to start. Maybe he's just not ready yet. We'll see though. But moving on, shouts out to Sam Fortier, because this is a great point. He provides the clip and the tweet that I'm about to read to you. He said, cornerbacks gotta hit when you're gonna play for Joe Wood Jr. There's no way around it. No way around it. You are going to hit as a cornerback. Remember, before we even got it was the introductory press conference for Joe Wood Jr. when we first hired him, before we even got to the draft and everything. He said that we're going to play with a certain mentality on defense that everybody's not necessarily going to like. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're not ready to play with the mentality that we require of our players, you're going to hit, you're going to run fast, you're going to put your body on the line. If you're not ready to do that, then you're not a fit here. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You could be a future Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler, but if you don't play with that mentality, you're not a good fit for what we need in this defense, because we require that of our players. And as you can see in this clip right here, they did not play. As soon as we got the pads on, the corners are hitting. And shouts out to Emmanuel Forbes, because he's 15 pounds heavier this season, technically 17 as he corrected, and you can already see him starting to show off his strength and power in this drill. You can see it. It's noticeable. It's a difference between last year's Emmanuel Forbes and this year's. And just in case, here's another angle. You have Mike Sanverstil and Emmanuel Forbes going through the same exact tackling drills with another DB out there, and he shows some physicality in this clip. And shouts out to my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It. Make sure you follow him and subscribe to him as well everywhere. He brought up a great point in that clip that you just saw. Forbes closed that space noticeably quicker than the other 2. And we know Mike Sanverstil is a great run defender in college, even as small as he is. Emmanuel Forbes looked even better in that drill than even Mike Sanverstil looked. So we could have a huge breakout season in Emmanuel Forbes loading. We'll see. Because again, we already talked about in previous practices where him and Terry McLaurin were going toe for toe, back and forth. Emmanuel Forbes winning the rep, pass breakup. Terry McLaurin winning a rep, good long catch down the field. And then 2 plays later, Emmanuel Forbes getting a pass breakup on Terry McLaurin. They've been going toe to toe. Emmanuel Forbes is stepping up big time. They're making each other better. Iron sharpens iron. Now moving on to the safety group. And people have been asking me about Derek Forrest. I've been seeing it in the comment section, and I've been wondering, like, yeah, actually, what is going on with Derek Forrest? Where's the Derek Forrest information? And now I'm hearing from several people that he's out there with the 3s. Not even the 2s, but the 3s. At the very least with the 3rd team safeties. And it's only day 5 of training camp so far, but that's still pretty crazy and pretty telling that a guy that was starting for us 2 years ago, he would have started for us last year if he wasn't hurt, is now one of your 3rd string safeties. Like, he's not even one of your 2 starting safeties, not even one of your 2 secondary safeties. He's 5th at the highest on the depth chart right now. That's insane. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't work his way up the depth chart. But either way, he's a long way from starting as of today. Like, even today before practice, my dog Bleeding Burgundy and Gold said, go listen to John Combs' podcast. Seems like he has some of the same thoughts about Derek Forrest as I did. And then somebody replied and said, wait, what are your thoughts on Forrest? And then Bleeding Burgundy and Gold replied on Twitter, He's like safety 5 on the depth chart right now. People took an observation I made and got butthurt about it. I like Forrest, but it doesn't seem like he's the favorite of this staff. Could change once the pads come on. And again, the pads came on today, and it seemed like a lot of the same things that had already been going on in training camp. He's with the third stringers. We'll see though. Again, he has a lot of talent. I like Derek Forrest as well. We're just telling you what we're seeing on the field right now. And right now, he's with the third stringers. But that again, I want to emphasize that does not mean he can't work his way up by the time training camp and preseason are done. Now moving on, well, actually before we even move on, I do want to point out the fact that he's actually the highest overall in our entire safety group on Madden. You know, Madden just released their overall ratings for everybody, and I'm probably going to do a separate video breakdown of everybody on the roster, at least the most notable guys. And of course, maybe this may change by week 1 of the regular season or whatever. These are just the first initial ones that are out right now. But when you're looking at our safety Madden ratings, Derek Forrest is an 80 overall. Second to him is Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin 74, then Jeremy Reed 73, Percy Butler 70, and Dominique Hampton, the rookie, 68. And Derek Forrest is our highest overall safety right now because I guess he's the most proven most recently as of 2 years ago. But I mean, Jeremy Chin at his best, and especially with that elite athleticism, I feel like just off of speed and athleticism, overall rankings and attributes alone, he should be higher. But hey, man, maybe there's still some hope out there for Derek Forrest, at least according to Madden. Now, shouts out to Josh Taylor, because he said his biggest takeaway from today attending practice in person was that Jeremy Chin is going to be so good in this defense, and that's music to my ears, because y'all know Jeremy Chin and Armani Rogers are probably the 2 players I'm most excited about on this team. Of course, outside of Jaden Daniels, but like Brandon Coleman is big time because we need him to ball out. But Jeremy Chin and Armani Rogers, with the absolute freak athlete aliens that we have, throw Tyler Owens in there as well as the guys that I'm most excited about hearing positive news from every day after practice. Those are my 3: Jeremy Chin, Tyler Owens, and Armani Rogers easily, man. And then Josh Taylor also pointed out the fact that at some point Jeremy Chin had a really good breakup covering Zach Ertz on a slant in the red zone. And shouts out to Linnell, because he said after he had that breakup on Zach Ertz, he was barking at Zach Ertz when Daniels missed him just outside. And Chin is basically a tone setter. He's going to talk crazy, and I didn't even know that was a part of his game. I knew he was a freak athlete. Now that I'm hearing he's also a big trash talker, he's even talking crazy to Zach Ertz. He may be top 2 players on this team for me already, just off of that alone. Y'all know I love my trash talkers, man. If you ain't trash talking, you can only be but so high in my favorite players list, man. And only but so high. Now moving on to special teams, shouts out to Josh Taylor, because he pointed out the fact that the Washington Commanders started practice working on some new kickoff rules and returns with the pads on. We got the pads on. Let's see what these kickoffs start to look like now. And Josh Taylor did point out the fact that it's still weird to look at. I feel like a lot of y'all, once we get to this preseason, it's going to be a big shock to y'all. Even though a lot of people like me keep emphasizing how weird these kickoffs are going to look, I don't think y'all are truly going to understand and really process it until you see it for yourself. So when we get to this preseason, a lot of y'all will be shocked at how weird these kickoffs look, just to remind you. But when we were doing kickoff return drills, not punt return drills, kick return drills, Austin Eckler, Demir Bird, Mike Sanverstill, Olamide Zacchaeus, Davion Davis, Dax Milne, Casman Allen, Jahan Dotson, Jamison Crowder, Emmanuel Forbes were your returners in rotation for those drills. And Dan Quinn even said earlier in practice, before practice, that he's more comfortable with the punt return situation right now than the kick returns. The fret sounds more about the process than the personnel. So it's not even necessarily he's worried about kick returns because of the guys that we have potentially doing the returning. It's more so these are new rules. This is new territory, and they want to be the first ones to figure it out. But he's a little uncomfortable right now. There's some growing pains. And obviously the changes to the kickoffs were more dramatic than what basically based on what we have in the player group. And then Colin Dunphy replied to that tweet and brought up a good point. He said it could be a moot point right now if teams elect to just kick it through the end zone, as the opportunity to improve on that outcome is very small, according to some work by Kevin Cole and Josh Hermsmeyer. So they're like super advanced stats guys, and basically saying that statistically advanced stats wise, when you really get to like the number crunching, it may just statistically be a bigger advantage for teams to just kick it out the back of the end zone every single time, but we'll see. But basically, Colin Dunphy's point is that even though Dan Quinn is worried about kickoffs, maybe us fans and even Dan Quinn, the entire team itself, Larry Izzo, the special teams coordinator, maybe they shouldn't overthink it right now, because teams may not even want to actually kick it to you, and they may just be touchbacks every single time, but we'll see. Definitely make sure you're prepared just in case you do run into a team that doesn't want it to be a touchback every time. And maybe that's being made obvious by the fact that even though, like, we had 3 new people returning kickoffs today in practice that weren't doing so before. Like, punt returns, we've kind of had like a nice list of people, but you can probably tell that Dan Quinn is uncomfortable with the kick return situation. And he's talking about and saying that it's because of the rules, but maybe it's because of the players a little bit more. Because again, we had 3 new guys. You had Austin Eckler, Mike Sanverstil, and Olamide Zaccheaus doing kickoff returns today, which is a little different. So maybe he's starting to be like, all right, maybe let's bring some new guys in. Maybe that will help with our kick return situation. Maybe it's not looking good right now. And I haven't seen or heard anything about Olamide Zaccheaus returning kicks since voluntary OTAs, and Austin Eckler is very new to returning kicks as far as being part of that group. So they're really digging deep for some returners right now in the kickoffs. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll see. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, we have a few more random things, including Mike Sanverstil and Jordan McGee, who we're hearing great things about from both guys, having to carry the veterans pads at the end of practice, as you can see in the pictures on your screen right now, going through it. But hey, there's been way worse rookie hazing situations. So hey man, this is the least you can do, I guess. This isn't that bad. And then also after practice, you had Deron Payne signing autographs after practice with the fans. You had Luke McCaffrey, Terry McLaurin, and Jaden Daniels doing it after practice. After yesterday, all I heard was about Deron Payne doing it today. I'm pretty sure more players did it, but Deron Payne was the one that was emphasized by my boy Josh Taylor over there. And then also, just a quick little, just to get a little peep into Brian Robinson's personality, I'm only gonna play a small part of a whole 53-second clip of Brian Robinson mic'd up at practice. Here you go.
I might have to tell Colin, man, he be talking crazy. Hey, look, I'm authentic, bro. Ain't nothing about me gonna change.
Did you take care of that rash you had? Remember that rash you were telling me about?
Bro, get your ass back, bro. Y'all ain't got no damn rash, bro. I ain't got no damn rash. What rash? Get your ass away from me. That little more sturdy, ain't it? Can I get a break?
And then very lastly, before we get up out of here, Commanders edge rusher, starting edge rusher technically, and Cleveland Farrell was clowning Frankie Louvu for wearing a skirt, even though it's technically part of his culture. You know, Cleveland Farrell just couldn't help it. Again, we had the behind the scenes locker room footage of Emmanuel Forbes basically joning Jahan Dotson for having the straight back braids and saying that he looked like somebody from a show. Now you have Cleveland Farrell basically getting on Frankie Louvu for wearing the skirt that he has on. And I just love the fact, my main point is that we have bonding in the locker room, but here you go. Here's the clip right here.
Hey, bro. Oos, don't be coming here with that shit on, bro. Hold on. Oos, stand up, bro. Let me see that shit. Stand up. Hey, bro. Don't be coming in here wearing the skirts and shit. Nah, This is football culture right here. Football culture,
I mean, you can tell that these guys are just really having fun, man. I mean, the fact that we even have the high spirits enough to even, you know, do all of the joning and clowning and roasting and things like that. These guys really rock with each other. I'm loving the fact that it's a brotherhood. I remember most teams, well, really all teams, but like, you know, during that break between mandatory mini camps and training camps, everybody pretty much goes their separate ways. This is your time. This is really your only break from football throughout the entire year. Your only real long extended break. So this is the time to spend with your family. Go to Disney World, travel the country and things like that. Terry McLaurin pointed out the fact that even during this break, when everybody was everywhere, Jaden Daniels was mostly on the West Coast in California, things like that. Frankie Louvu even went to Greece at one point. Everybody was everywhere. Seemed like barely anybody was still in the DMV at that point in time. Seemed like everybody else went home somewhere. But Terry McLaurin pointed out the fact that even with everybody everywhere, they maintained great communication throughout that break, and everybody was still pledging to hold everybody accountable, hold themselves accountable, and they were bonding even throughout that break, where even though they weren't physically around each other, they would still continue that bonding. And it seems like it's paying off, and I can't wait to see how these high spirits go heading into that joint practice against the Jets. Let's see if we go out there and perform, and if we can keep those high spirits, if everybody can still be really excited and bonded and things like that. We'll see what this looks like once they finally get tested. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, man. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned for all of the content. Again, every day that we have access to practice, you're gonna get a breakdown and you're gonna get clips of what we saw in practice every day, just like this video. So make sure you stay tuned. And again, like I said before the intro, even days that we don't have practice, I have so many ideas for videos that y'all are still gonna get content content every single day. So I can't wait. I'm actually kind of looking forward to a day where we don't have practice just a little bit. Players get a day off and I get to finally push out some of these ideas for videos that I have that loaded up. But maybe I'm just going to take a day to where even a day that I do a training camp breakdown like this, I just put out a video later that night as well. So make sure y'all stay tuned for all of the content. I got y'all covered. Of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video, every position group, every player. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Let me know if there were any players that we didn't cover in this breakdown that you want to hear more about. I'm gonna try my best to dig for those players wherever I can find any information that I can get. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. I got y'all covered. Everything Commanders. If we start to sign guys or we start to claim guys off the waiver wire, of course I'm gonna update y'all on those and do weaknesses and strengths breakdowns of those guys and how they may contribute to the team or they project to start, all of that. So be on the lookout for any little thing Commanders. I got y'all, your one-stop shop. I got y'all. Catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.